Hello, everyone. I hope you're not sick of me quite yet. You're going to get a lot more of me for this hour. So, just a couple of quick things. Please take a seat. Grab any seat that's open if you are not seated yet. And also, please feel free to eat through this. We, do not hold your forks. We're happy with the noise. So please just eat as we're talking. And thank you so much for joining us for Better Together, Unlocking the Power of Climate Partnerships. This afternoon, we're going to discuss how transformative climate action is achievable only through solutions-oriented partnerships across sectors. But before we begin, I would just like to thank our title sponsor, Amazon, for making this breakout possible. With that, I would love to welcome to the stage Sally Fouts, Global Leader of the Climate Pledge, to give a couple of opening remarks.
Hi, thanks, and thank you, Meg. And thank you to everyone at Bloomberg Green for all of the amazing work you've done to bring this festival to life. Thanks to everyone who's here in the room today. My name is Sally Fouts. I lead the Climate Pledge at Amazon here in Seattle, and we're thrilled to have a festival in Seattle, so thanks for that, Bloomberg. And for those who are not familiar with the Climate Pledge, it's a commitment to reach net zero carbon by 2040. When Amazon and Global Optimism co-founded the Climate Pledge in 2019, it was also a call to other businesses to join us. Because as you'll hear today, we need to be working together, bringing collective knowledge, resources, and all of the great work that's happening across the private sector, public sector, NGOs, and other organizations together if we're going to really meet those goals. So the panel we're about to hear is about collaboration and working together. And as I was thinking about that, this thing kept popping into my head. And I have an almost 7-year-old daughter. She'll be 7 next week. Her name's Jane. Her favorite book currently is called Kamala and Maya's Big Idea. And it's a really cute, really straightforward kids book, but it's about 2 young girls who have this big idea to build a playground in the courtyard of the apartment building that they live in. And as they set out to build this playground, as many of us have probably experienced, they encounter a lot of no's initially. But as they continue to persevere and work on this idea, they find a community of people who can each offer some form of resource to help them make this big idea come to life. And there's this phrase in the book that my daughter loves to say, and it kind of tickles my heart every time she says it, but it's, no one person can do everything, but everyone can do something. And it's a very simple phrase, and I think it's something that we talk about a lot in these rooms, but it's so relevant to where we are in climate right now and this approach that we need to take together. So I wanted to also mention, Amazon just yesterday launched a new website. It's the Amazon Sustainability Exchange, which is a set of resources, playbooks, guides, tools, and other things, from how to decarbonize a building to a playbook on carbon-free energy. And we're releasing some of those things which were previously confidential and proprietary to Amazon because we want to help the community go faster. And so we'll continue releasing more of those materials, but it's also an invitation to other companies to start releasing the things that you've been working on, that you've built over the years, all of the knowledge and things that you've learned. Share them with the community so that we can all go faster, because we need collaboration if we're going to achieve the goals that we need to achieve. So with that, I'm really excited to hear from the panelists, and thank you so much for having us. I hope everyone enjoys the festival. And I hope to meet every single one of you at some point soon. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sally. Now I would love to introduce our first session to the stage. We have Gina McCarthy, former U.S. National Climate Advisor and EPA Administrator and Managing Co-Chair of the America's All-In Coalition, and Becky Ferguson, CEO of the Salesforce Foundation and Senior Vice President of Philanthropy for Salesforce. Those are 2 long titles. Woo! You both deserve it, though.
Have we run out of time already?
Thank you both so much for joining me. So we're obviously here to talk a little bit about partnerships. You both have unique experiences in both. Gina, let's start with you. I know you have, what have you not done, I guess, in your career at this point? Everything. Can you just share a little bit about some of the different types of ways you've seen partnership work across public-private sector, everything that you've experienced?
Well, first of all, I'm glad we're talking about partnerships because I think we need to really move. And the only way we're going to do that is if we work together. And so I've seen some extraordinary opportunities for public and private partnerships. Some of them are explicitly stated that way. Others just grow into that. And I think I see both in the U.S. I think the Inflation Reduction Act was a public-private partnership.
Right.
It basically is giving some resources to attract a lot more private sector dollars, and it's working. But I also see this internationally, and one of the most important things I think for us to remember is the obligation that we owe to the global South and how we can start being much better and smarter about how to build those kind of public-private partnerships to actually invest in the global South that desperately needs it. I think sometimes we forget that climate change is a global problem. We won't fix it unless every country has an opportunity to build in a way that's going to keep them healthy and safe and prosperous. So that's what these partnerships are all about. And there's enormous opportunities here.
Could you share a little bit, Becky, about what all the work you're doing at Salesforce and Salesforce Foundation?
Sure. Well, first, it's great to be here, share a meal with this collective group, and be in conversation with Gina. And yes, so Salesforce, it's interesting that we're celebrating our 25th year anniversary this year, and it's I think from the get-go, our founders had a mission of really like how do we create a new business model, but also how do we create a new model of giving back. And from the early days, we had some people, we had some product, we had some equity, and it really kind of birthed what we think of as our 1-1-1 model. And over the years, we have been really a values-based company, and sustainability is one of our 5 core values. As a company, it comes to life in a lot of different ways across our business, including in our philanthropy with our ecosystem and climate justice restoration fund, but also through our ventures portfolio, a lot of different ways that our climate work comes to life.
A quick follow-up question on that. Where do you feel like that leadership and setting those commitments really came from internally?
Well, I think it's both a top-down and a bottom-up, right? It's been a part of our company from the early days in the DNA, but it's also, I think, then what starts to attract people to the company as well. I think more and more people want to feel they're a part of a values-based company. So I think it's become more of a pull factor. So then you start to have this both top-down, bottom-up. So I think it's really been the combination of the two.
Gina, back to you. Right now, I know you are, as I said, you're co-chair of America's All In. Could you share a little bit more with the group about what America's All In for those who, I guess, raising of hands, anybody who knows what America's All In is at this point? Okay, we've got a little bit, but we've got a lot of newbies. So can you share a little bit about what it is?
Well, America is All In is probably one of the largest groups of human beings that have gathered together with real authority to tackle the climate crisis across the U.S. And Bloomberg has pulled this together. It's mayors and governors, industry leaders, philanthropies. I mean, you name it, folks are engaged. It's now well over 5,000. And so we're excited about it because it's an opportunity to do a couple of things. One is to recognize the challenges that are out there, but also the opportunities that exist. Look, I firmly believe that we have everything we need, every technology, product, process that we need to tackle the climate crisis. So what we need is leadership, right? This is building leadership across corporate America, across governments, to actually continue to move forward. Regardless of what the federal government says, we're going to be out there acting. So we are all about going to different mayors in different cities and governors, and we bring teams of technical people so they can learn how to access the Inflation Reduction Act money. Money's great, but not if you can't figure out how to use it. and grab it. And so we're starting at square one to recognize that there's tremendous opportunity, but also enthusiasm and excitement right now. We have to build on that. And we have to make sure that we turn that excitement into action. That's what America is all in. Because frankly, if America is not all in, we're not going to win.
Yes. Hands to that, yeah. So one follow-up question on America's All In. Given the political, we have an election coming up. You talked a little bit about that IRA and how important that has been for partnerships and for getting the money that you need. Do you feel like there is a way for us to protect all of that if there is a change in what happens in the election this year?
Maybe it's the answer is it depends on the change. Yeah, there is. I mean, we've been through challenges before. I think one of the good news things about the Inflation Reduction Act is that it basically has provided around $370 billion in private sector investment has come in. And we see that money actually, the vast majority of it is going to Republican districts. So I think there's a lot of interest in making sure that people aren't going around and shooting themselves in the foot. So I think because it's been so successful, it's a lot of money and it's impacting constituencies in Republican and Democratic districts, that there's a really good opportunity for us to maintain the momentum. Now, will it mean no change? If there's a change in administration, absolutely not. We'll have to keep fighting. But frankly, that's exactly how America is all in grew up. It's to make sure, like we did the last time, we keep fighting together at the subnational level. Because when the federal government doesn't do its job, that's the backstop for everything else. And it's there, and it's going to continue to be there because we've grown it, and we're going to keep growing it more.
Yeah, amazing. Becky, over to you, a little bit shifting gears. So talking more about partnerships, could you share a little bit more about the Mangroves project and how kind of you've used partnerships on that?
Yeah, definitely. Love to talk about that. Mangroves are one of our amazing climate champions out there, right? These blue forests not only provide food, shelter, and livelihoods, they help support biodiversity, they help build coastal resilience, and they're one of the most productive carbon sinks out there. And so, when it comes down to it, mangroves are really important for climate, for nature, for people and communities. And while vast amounts of mangroves have been lost over the last half century, the tides are starting to turn, and there really is an opportunity for restoration of our mangroves. And really, I think it comes down to both, Gina, to your point, that not only capital, but coordination around that capital. It's estimated it would take $4 billion to secure the future of 15 million hectares of mangroves globally, which is an ambitious target, but it's also one that's not within reach. And the Mangrove Breakthrough is an example of a partnership, one that brings together companies, communities, NGOs, and countries, really think about how can we halt the loss of mangroves, but how can we also protect and sustainably manage those that we have left, and then how do you unlock capital to scale, to your point, the things we know that work and mobilize like real action on the ground. So I think it's one of those strong examples that brings together multiple government signatories, leadership from some of the most credible organizations, sort of setting aside their individual goals in pursuit of a common interest, a common goal, the UN, but also companies, foundations, financial institutions putting money behind things, and also really diverse representation of voices from different populations, indigenous communities. And so, yeah, it's one of those examples, I think, of a partnership where you can kind of see the potential for really planetary scale impact to protect and preserve one of our most critical ecosystems.
How do you identify the right types of partners if somebody's trying to figure out, how do I find other organizations to help me with my climate goals? How do you identify those? Let's start with you, Becky.
Yeah, I think it's probably an art more than a science. But right when it comes down to it, you need great people to get big things done. I think people who do a lot of work in collective impact or systems change will say, in order to change a system, you need to get the system in the room together. So I think a lot of it is really about how do you bring diverse voices and perspectives around a table together, your scientists, but also your storytellers, and really being thoughtful about who's around the table, what voices are around the table, but also who might be missing.
Gina?
One of the things I think about when you try to figure out who your partners are is that one of the things I always try to do is remind people that the concept of climate change and greenhouse gases is not something that everybody can easily digest and also get excited about because they feel like it's so big, what can anybody do? So I think it's hugely important when you're building partnerships to speak in language that people can relate to. I don't go out and talk about greenhouse gas emissions. I talk about air quality. I talk about how many children die every day because our air quality is awful, and we know where that's coming from. And climate and health are entirely related and need to be addressed that way. And we talk about money savings. People don't need to be asked to sacrifice anymore. We don't need sacrifice. What we need is investment. And so if we can do this right, we're going to save people money. That matters. And I'm not saying there's just nothing wrong with going to communities and making sure that they understand the benefits of what you're trying to do. So while we may be trying to save the planet, they're trying to put food on their table. So let's get real about that and make sure that everybody knows why you're doing it and the benefits that matter to our families and our communities. That's when we will win.
A follow-up question to that. I think we all probably feel that, or all of us working in climate, that a lot of times it's this uphill battle to exactly what you said. People just get overwhelmed. They feel like the problem's too big. What can I do? So I'm not going to deal with it at all. I'm not going to think about it. What do you do to combat that? I'll start with you, Gina.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I think you need to reach people where they are, but I'm not sure that's as big a problem as it used to be. I think the problem now is to get money where it's needed.
Good.
Yeah.
We made progress. That makes me happy to hear.
Yeah, I really think that, and it's exciting to see the opportunities now.
Yeah, I mean, we've put this festival together, and look at all the people that have come. We wouldn't have seen that 5 years ago. So yeah. Becky, anything you would add to that too?
I think maybe also the power in stories. And I think, Gina, to your point, the speaking in plain language and sort of stripping away the jargon, I think sometimes one of the most powerful ways that can come to life is through stories and through storytelling and through different voices of stories. And I think that can be really uplifting and a way for people to relate to things.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point, too. Okay, so we've talked about identifying partners and how do you find them. How do you measure the success once you have started one? And we'll do that back to you, Becky.
Well, I think some of the most impactful or powerful partnerships I've seen have had very clear and ambitious goals, a timeline with them. But I also think that sometimes the success of partnerships is just the process itself is the solution. So yes, a big ambitious goal, one that would be bigger than anyone to do on their own, can be really motivating, but also recognizing, the sometimes with partnerships, the magic is just in the process of being in partnership together. And and then I think also just like sticking in the game long enough to see change, especially through, the ups and downs of partnerships. There can be a lot of energy at the beginning, and then, things can kind of slow and pick back up. And that's, I think, where having a really ambitious North Star can keep the motivation up, but also knowing, behind the scenes, the process itself is really powerful and sometimes harder to measure, because like when it really comes down to it, partnerships are so much about people and relationships. So the strength of those relationships, those ties and those networks, I think is also a real, an indicator of the success that partnerships can have.
Gina, follow-up question that you can add to, but I was just going to say, how do you really maintain those partnerships? Like, what do you do to keep those relationships going?
I think it's honest dialogue about what's working and what isn't. You know, I think we have to recognize as human beings that you fail sometimes. And other times you do something and everybody starts going, so how'd they do that? And that's when you have to be clear about how'd you do that? You know, I feel like this is not a time when we want to focus on ourselves as much as we want to focus on our opportunity for humanity. You know, this is an existential challenge, and it demands quite honest dialogue about what's worked, what hasn't, what's likely to be built on. And so I think that's the important part, is to not hide when you've had a failure, and not to think that that's going to be permanent, but to really just keep plugging along, but make the success visible to everybody. It's about hope, right? You know, if we all just sit around being depressed, we're going to be sitting here forever saying the same damn thing. So we've got to get excited and see these opportunities for what they are.
I would love to take a couple of audience questions now. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, got one over there.
Hello, my name's Adam. I work with Climate Solutions here in town in Oregon on a fleet decarbonization accelerator, and we work with a lot of partners. And I have found that the warm leads make it so much easier to grow those partnerships. And I would love to hear from you all how you do your partnership growth, maybe for folks that are a little more resource confined than Salesforce is per se, and how you best go about kind of building those relationships and building those bridges.
Start with you, Becky. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I think a lot about with partnerships is also just sort of what each partner can bring to the table. And right, in partnerships that we're a part of, oftentimes it's really simple things like helping to make an introduction for an organization, or we do a lot of events ourselves, right? Inviting our partners to have a presence in those events. Just sort of looking at all of the sort of they might seem like small acts, but like really powerful, I think, sort of seeds or ripples. And I have a colleague who sort of said, like, always pick up the phone, take that call. And it might not be like I can do this exactly, but I might know someone else in my network that can help with that, and be sort of working the ties and connections that we have with one another.
Can I just take a second to give a shout out to Climate Solutions? They're so awesome. But also to give a shout out to Governor Inslee, because he's nearing the end of his term, and you folks, anyone who is in this state, needs to recognize that there are bills that are trying to undermine that progress, and please make sure you get active in protecting the progress that's been made in this state. It is groundbreaking, and do not let any single big person who spent a ton of money who's trying to defeat this win. Please. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
It's Gina. It's why we love
great
you.
Role model.
Well, and it's a nice plug because we have Governor Inslee at 2:00, so stay tuned.
That's great.
Any other questions from the audience? We can probably take one more over there. Making you run, Sam. Sorry.
The food is coming.
Yeah.
Hi, Paul Bergen. I work with Exit Ventures. We're a climate tech venture capital. We specialize in helping corporations partner with startups in order to accelerate the commercialization and the global commercialization of these critical technologies so that we can get this tech out into the marketplace faster. I'm curious, what best practices have you seen in terms of accelerating progress through technology, what models have you seen that work the best, and what gets you excited about how we're actually commercializing real advancements in technology that are making a difference? Thanks.
Should have had you muttering up here. You got you got some great questions. All right, Becky, you want to start with that one?
Well, one thing I would say has been sort of it's been exciting and interesting for us too is we just spend a lot of time looking at our capital stack as a company. So, right, we think about our philanthropic dollars, what role they could play alongside our venture portfolio, maybe sustainability or green bonds. So we do a lot of work as a company to kind of look at what is our capital stack, what role can different forms of capital best play. We put out a piece of work actually last year on a corporate climate finance playbook, sort of kind of bring together some of our lessons on that. But for us, it's really been how do you look at that spectrum of capital and the different roles it can play to help both seed, test new ideas, but also get them out into scale, into market.
Anything you want to add on that one?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Other than to say, I think it's a really great idea for corporations to start looking at these types of partnerships, but it's challenging. And I know that I'm doing a lot of work now with a few investment companies, and it's challenging because I think, the carbon credit market needs to be legitimate. It needs to grow. There are ways in which we need to look at the financial viability of the investments that we're making. And if we don't think more creatively and start investing well, we're not going to win. And so I think it's really exciting. I've spent a lot of time with chief sustainability officers who are struggling with the dynamics of today. Let's get over those dynamics and really just start acting together.
One final question to end on. What keeps you both motivated to continue doing this work? Gina, start with you.
5 grandchildren.
Yeah.
That's what motivates me. That's what I'm working for every single day. It's their future that we have to hand to them, and I ain't going to be the one to lose it.
Yeah. Becky?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of wonderful, beautiful things happening, and I think just taking moments to appreciate those small wins, and then also just a little bit of levity and humor, I feel like also helps me power through tough moments.
Well, you two and Gina, you keep me motivated because you always show me we can all do it. So
You too, Meg.
Thank
you.
Thank you both so much for your time.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So we've got another session coming up. We need to bring one more chair since I've got 3 of us, but I will go ahead and introduce our next speakers and you guys can join us. Please, we're going to be talking about, the name of the next session is Collaborating for Change, Arenas, Sports, and Entertainment. So we're going to talk a little bit about how looking at partnerships and a case study example of how we can take this into events, into arenas. So please join me in welcoming Zoe Berman, Chief Operating Officer of Sound Future, Chris Granger, President of OVG 360. Yes, I got that right. And then Chris Rowe, Director of Worldwide Carbon for Amazon, to the stage. We got 2 Chris's, so it's gonna get a little confusing up here, my Chris's, but we'll sort through it. Why don't we just start with some general? I'd just love to hear a little bit more about the work each of you are focused on in this space specifically. So let's start with Chris Rowe down there.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. I'm Chris Rowe, and I lead our carbon work at Amazon. And as Sally talked about, the climate pledge is really our North Star to achieve net zero carbon by 2040, 10 years ahead of Paris. And so I get the privilege of working internally at a crazy company like Amazon to figure out how do we do that? How do we mobilize action across very diverse businesses, and how do we think about integrating carbon as a core metric that we are going to drive down over time across our operations?
Amazing. Chris Granger.
I work for a company called Oakview Group. We are the largest developer and operator of arenas and live entertainment spaces in the world. That's arenas, stadiums, convention centers, music festivals, cultural institutions. We own and or operate over 400 venues of varying types and sizes. One of my sort of core functions within that, other than the management of those venues, is to take the lessons learned here at Climate Pledge Arena and apply those to other operators and other venues to help them operate more sustainably as well.
Amazing. Zoe?
My name is Zoe Berman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Sound Future, and we are a small but mighty nonprofit organization that's leveraging the power of live events to drive collective climate action and accelerate climate innovation and nature-based restoration projects. So we do that through a couple different lenses, but a lot of testing tech at live events to kind of demonstrate its efficacy and its scalability. Offering, collecting and offering vetted, robust resources and sustainable vendors that can be adopted throughout the industry, and kind of serving as a voice for connecting and sort of removing silos between the climate science community and the live events community. And then sort of most recently within the last year, we've launched our Surf and Turf Restoration Program, which is essentially the first of its kind sort of restoration initiative entirely powered by live events. So that is basically raising money, channeling funds through the live event industry through standard sort of dollar per ticket model or merch proceeds, and channeling that into really high integrity, vetted, boots on the ground restoration initiatives, surf being sort of marine based, coral aquaculture, kelp restoration, things of that nature, and then turf being regenerative agriculture, terrestrial based projects. And so just kind of finding the highest integrity, biggest bang for your buck projects that we can channel funding from the live events industry into, and just to create a world where gathering does good and shift the narrative from, basically saying we've gathered, we've done something naughty, and now we need to offset that to, okay, how can we drive some really collective good through the act of gathering?
Let's start with Climate Pledge, because we are here and it is just behind us, basically. Chris Rowe, why don't we start with you and just, I know the Chris's are both pretty involved in this, but just a look at kind of the massive undertaking it was in getting Climate Pledge Arena launched.
Great, yeah. So I grew up in Seattle, and I used to go to games with the Sonics. Hope they come back at some point. And hopefully you were at happy hour last night in the shadow of Climate Pledge Arena, but it was a joy for me to work on personally. We had a chance to purchase the naming rights to Climate Pledge Arena back in 2020 during the heart of the pandemic. I was trying to figure out how to do kindergarten with my kids at home and figure out how to work with these folks on making hopefully the most sustainable arena in the world come to life. And it was a real privilege to be able to do that in partnership with an amazing set of folks at the Open Group and the Kraken. And we chose to really think about what would it mean to actually set an ambitious target of creating the world's most sustainable arena. And so we set up with some headlines around food and transportation and the building and the experience. And we set up real headlines. And we like, for example, we want to have the greenest ice in the NHL. How do we do that? Okay, well, we're going to collect rainwater. And then along the way, there were so many no's, and there were so many opportunities for this thing to not go right. But it was super fun to see this thing come into real life. And just personally, it's been really amazing to take my kids now to Kraken games and know that there's abandoned natural gas piping throughout that building because it's all electric. I know my kids don't care at all, but I am super passionate about it. And it's just a real fun example of partnership.
Yeah, Chris Granger, anything you want to add to?
And partnership is the right word, right? This isn't about a naming rights deal. This isn't about sponsorship. I mean, this is as authentic as it can get. We cannot do what we are doing as operators without your partnership and without the guidance and the help with carbon accounting, the help with how do we think about the elimination of single-use plastic in the building and what are the implications of that up the supply chain. I mean, there are so many little but giant issues that we have to tackle in order to pull off a true zero carbon building, and we could not do it without you. So again, just kudos to you and your team and everybody at Amazon and the Climate Pledge. I mean, what we've done by itself is amazing, but beyond that, it's really given the industry something to say, it can be done. I can do that too. Or if I can't do all of it, I can do some of it. Like it's really it's changed the conversation about what's possible in our industry, and I think that is going to be one of the lasting legacy implications of this partnership.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Zoe, to you, I think, I know we're talking specifically about the Climate Pledge Arena, but I would love to hear from all of you, and we'll kind of go down. When you are embarking on something this massive, what's your advice on how you really tackle something like this? And I think actually, how do you kind of make that start and really tackle it? Go with you first, Zoe.
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of just breaking it down piece by piece and thinking, taking it one step at a time. Like Chris said, you don't need to tackle everything at once, and it might not be about doing everything. It might be about doing what is sort of tangible and accessible to you in that given moment and then going from there. And so we try to approach everything with this sort of green on green philosophy of, okay, we want solutions that are good for the bottom line and better for the audience experience, better for the artists or the sort of all stakeholders experience, and also have this, this other factor of being good for the climate, for being good for the planet. So kind of to approach it from that angle, but just taking it piece by piece. So looking at solutions kind of in the waste sector, looking at solutions in audience transport and artist transport, looking at solutions in water and food and concessions, and how can we reshape that to have more plant-based offerings and kind of shifting things around. There's so many solutions. If you really break it down, events are kind of like mini cities, and if you think about it from the same perspective that you would approach decarbonizing a city, but just think of it as a smaller sort of nut to crack, then it makes it a little bit more tangible, and you can find solutions across each of those key areas.
Chris Rowe, back to you. When you started this journey, what was kind of the thing you found the most interesting, or that you were most surprised, like as you embarked on trying to sort through this amazing undertaking?
When we decided to make this partnership happen, we thought about what can we bring to the table, to your point. And we've been the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy for the last 4 years in a row. And even just this last week, we've announced we've hit 100% renewable energy, and that's great for Amazon. Yeah. But it's even cooler when we're able to use those learnings and enable others to kind of follow. And so when we're able to partner on these opportunities to make an all-electric arena powered by renewables, we had a lot to bring to the table. But doing that alone wouldn't be enough to, I think, keep up to the namesake of Climate Pledge Arena. What about the food? What about the transportation? And those are areas that the Oakview Group and others brought a ton of knowledge to the table. So it was really fun to just the co-learning, the co-inspiration, and riffing on things and knowing where can we bring value, where we can help accelerate, how can we use our learnings. And as Sally mentioned, trying to extend those learnings out to the public and our supply chain as well.
You also had mentioned to me something that I found interesting, which was that when you get a no, how to turn that to a yes. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I think this is an endurance game, and things don't happen automatically. And every no is a super important wayfinding to get to a yes. And not letting a good no go to waste is kind of one of my mantras. And I think at the arena, there was natural gas-fired HVAC equipment sitting ready to be constructed. Like, we got to make this thing all electric. How do we do that? How do we get to a yes? And looking the construction management team and the procurement team in the eyes and saying, we're going to do this, like, what? What are you talking about? But like understanding their concerns, well, how are we going to make 1 million pizzas during halftime without gas? Like, well, let's figure it out. Like, that's a no, and it's a wayfinding device that we can get into and really solve a problem. And that was sort of the spirit that we took on to really kind of get to yeses and ultimately get to what now we think the greenest arena in the world.
Chris Granger, over to you. When you do one of these projects, this one specifically, others that you work on, and how do you kind of approach it with the client and with the other partners that you're working with?
I think and you heard it on the last panel too, you try to meet people in communities where they are, and not every issue matters the same to every community. So we have a program called GOAL. GOAL stands for Green Operations and Advanced Leadership, and it's our collaboration of like-minded operators who want to move further, faster. But in working with them, you have some where they are in the Southwest United States where water conservation is a real issue, so the focus there is about water. We have other communities where tree equity and tree canopy is a real issue as it relates to sort of the justice implications of that, so we try to focus on that within the community. We have others where there's a particular baseball team who we found through our tracking mechanism that they're producing 2 times as much waste as the average team in Major League Baseball. So it leads to 20 questions about, well, why is that, and what are you doing differently, and was there something different about your market? But there's so many different levers to pull, and again, it's what Zoe said, like, you don't have to tackle them all at the same time. Let's focus on the issues that matter most to you. Let's get some traction, let's get some wins, and we can go from there.
So Zoe, to you, I know you guys offer some really cool resources. Can you talk a little bit more about your climate conscious vendor directory that you've put together and how people can utilize that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just open source on our website. We're building out a vetted, everything just very underpinned with data and a robust vetting process of just sustainable vendors, and then kind of categorizing that by the locale that they service, because we do hear that feedback often. That's the first excuse everyone jumps to is, oh, well, we don't have reusables in our municipality, or, oh, well, we don't have commercial composting, so we need to come up with a different solution. And so kind of just having resources that are applicable for different communities across the country, across the globe, and we've been building that out and expanding it over time, and ultimately are in the process of turning that into an AI-powered Green Rider app that will generate solutions for venues and artists, and kind of meet them in the middle to find, so that artists can match with venues that are utilizing those resources, and that venues, are kind of creating this competitive spirit with one another to be keeping up and kind of creating more, integrating more sustainable solutions.
Chris Rowe, back over to you. So in the role of partnerships and something like this, you have the Climate Pledge, not the Climate Pledge Arena.
Yeah.
How did that help in the process of this journey?
Well, Amazon covers a lot of surface area, and our path to net zero will not be linear. And we also have a lot of solutions at our fingertips that we're taking action on fast. Electric vehicles, we have over 20,000 now on the road, delivering packages to you all every day. The 100% renewable energy match we talked about is super exciting. There's a lot of work left to be done, and we're in several hard-to-abate sectors: steel, concrete. How do we actually make real progress? And these solutions will not come overnight without interventions and partnerships and investments. And so we stood up a $2 billion fund called the Climate Pledge Fund. It really aims to do just that, is look at the hardest parts of our footprint to abate and set out real technologies and invest in them, and then use them to scale these solutions that we all need. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to tackle the problem.
Chris Granger, and this for everybody, but we'll start with you, and you shared a little bit about this, but technology, what is the role of technology that we're seeing the play in this journey and in the projects you're working on?
I think it's multifaceted. For us, it's everything from how do you track? How do you just track your carbon? How do you track your energy? How do you track your waste? How do you track your energy use in the building, and just having that baseline understanding at all times, so then, okay, here's how I'm performing over time. Then what we do is layer on top of that, here's what venues are doing, other venues in the Pacific Northwest, other NHL venues, other arenas that are more than 15,000 seats, to give you a baseline of comparables that, again, help uncover some questions along the way. That's one aspect of it, but it might also just be about what technology can you use so that when you're thawing meat in your commissary, that you're not just running water into the sink and losing that water. How can you recycle that water, and what technology helps you solve that small but real issue within buildings? So again, I think at every sort of pinch point or pain point in the process, there might be a technology answer that can help you create more efficiency, that can help uncover performance over time, or can help solve the problem for you.
Zoe, what are some of the cool new technologies in that second category that you have seen that are starting to develop that are helping with the sustainability of large-scale events and arenas?
Well, I first just want to say I completely agree, and I love what the Goal platform that's really just creating these tools for collecting baseline data, because that is kind of a novel approach in our industry. I think it's a lot of sort of stakeholders within the live event industry. You approach them with the idea of data collection, and they're like, data? That's the nerds over there. We don't touch that. So it's it's just a matter of knowing where you stand, so that you know where you're headed. So
or it's
critically
data
important.
for office buildings, or data for something that's irrelevant to what I do, which is again why we try to focus it on my life.
Yeah.
Here's what matters.
Make it relevant.
Right?
Yeah, and just use words that are accessible. Use issues that are pertinent, and that is just critically important for just getting everyone kind of to find their place in that movement. But in terms of specific technologies, I think it's also a matter of how you define technology, because it can go from mycelium-based earplugs made from oyster mushrooms, if that's that's an emerging idea to reduce plastic waste. It can be as complicated as an AI-powered waste sorting robot, or composting biodigesters. It can be using large-scale AI Earth observation models to see where we stand with plastic consumption, where we stand with waste. We're powering the sort of tech platform behind our restoration program with an AI Earth observation model that's demonstrating the relative contributions of different events and mapping them onto essentially a swath of land or sea and showing a restoration progress over time. And so utilizing that technology not just to lower emissions and to reduce waste and cost, but also to engage people and say, okay, well now we need the visual storytelling component of this, so let's harness technology for that piece of it. So there's really there's so many examples. I mean, from upcycling, waste into incredible art and engaging people in that way. Some arenas are doing great work with that, from taking food waste and creating candy that can be given out as concessions. I mean, the list goes, there's just so many incredible examples. Like, it's such an exciting time to be in this field, and especially in the live event sphere, because, it's really visible.
Yeah. Chris Rowe, anything you want to add on that one?
I mean, technology is core to what we do, but I think really kind of when in doubt, we follow the science and we have a good time doing it. And those two things, you don't need to also, I think Gina said it really well, and she's still here, super big fan, and I'm really grateful to have your voice in this conversation. But a lot of the solutions are actually at our fingertips. And so it's a matter of finding ways to integrate what already works. And from a tech perspective, obviously, that is core to how we think about Amazon's footprint and collecting all that data. I mean, I know in our early kind of conversations, it was about, well, how do we model the carbon footprint of an arena, and Beyonce coming in on an airplane, and all that stuff. And actually, we have models that can do that, so we're able to share that. So it's about obviously inventing and finding new innovations, but also using what we have and sharing it.
I would like to go to some more audience questions at this point. Anybody have some? One back in the corner over there to the left.
I can talk now. I'm Heidi with HBO, and it just tails right onto what you were saying. We have a website called BreakoutGuide.com where we work collectively with the other studios and streamers to make tools for anybody. So whether you're an independent or a student filmmaker or whatever, to go there and find resources very similar to your website that has a presenter guide. I was just wondering if you also had an open source tool for footprinting of this, because we're starting to green our premieres and green our press tours and that kind of stuff. Do you have anything for that we don't have to recreate?
Yeah, there are a lot of companies creating really incredible resources for that. We don't have that at the moment because we're more focused on this restoration program and on kind of creating some of these other resources. But there are a lot of incredible softwares out there. Green Disco is one that's available. I think Goal has a lot of those resources available. If you're
We do. It's a bit different for us because we do charge people for that. Not because we're trying to make money, because we don't, but it's by making people pay a small fee to participate, it ensures their focus and their intensity of it. Mm-hmm. If we were to give away the tool for free, then we're not as convinced yet that everyone puts in the time and the discipline and the intentionality into it. Yeah. There clearly will be those who will, but by and large, we want to get this launched and we want to learn in such a way that it's people who are the most committed to it right now. So by putting a small sort of entry fee, it's more likely that they use it. That's what we found so far, at least.
I think that's true across the board. I haven't seen any that don't have at least some fee for involvement, unless it's just a very basic sort of carbon calculator. So typically there is some kind of fee for that service, but yeah, I'm sure that'll evolve over time.
Yeah. Any other audience questions? Oh, okay. We answered all the questions. Do you have one? Yeah, you have one. Okay.
My name is Lena. I just wanted to ask, if you think about the arenas and the venues that you operate, how do you think about expanding the circle around the venues in terms of decarbonizing and helping the communities that they're in?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right question because it's not the arena, for example, sits in the middle of a beautiful park, right? And people are gathering. We gather at OVG roughly 300 million fans across all of our venues. But it's not just in the venue, it's around the venue, it's in the restaurants outside the venue, it's standing in line, and there's waste created outside, and there's transportation, carbon that's created coming to and from venues and tailgating. So we do try to think about the holistic experience, not just the in-arena experience. So for example, here at Climate Pledge Arena, and I should just give a quick shout out to Rob Johnson and B. Treat in the back who do the actual work at Climate Pledge Arena. So kudos to them.
Rob Johnson is one of our green champions as well.
As he should be, as he should be. Every ticket holder can come to the event free on public transportation. So like we do try to extend the focus and the footprint beyond just what's happening in the arena. And again, that could be transportation, it could be issues of stormwater runoff, it could be tree canopy issues, which I mentioned before. It could be using our parking lots to create solar arrays over and above to create shade in the parking lot. But it's not just about the arena, it's the sort of the broader space that we can influence we're trying to do things with.
Anybody else want to add anything on
Yeah,
that?
I'll add to that. So we are focused on trying to reach community. I mean, this is still kind of within the live event sphere, but trying to reach communities that haven't formerly been invited in a way that is accessible to them into this sort of climate conversation. And so we're really, like, particularly with our restoration program, we're really trying to focus on reaching country fans, reaching rap communities, reaching communities where we can utilize different language than what they've been approached with previously, so that they see their place and they see that they can find their footing in this conversation. And then building out restoration programs that are in their backyard. So we're focusing, like, for example, with regenerative agriculture projects in the state of Georgia. We're focusing on, kelp restoration in the state of Alaska, and trying to kind of reach these communities where not only are we bolstering and kind of supporting and amplifying the community and those being disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis, but we're trying to use language that really allows everybody a space in that conversation. And so we hope that reaches beyond, the sort of event space directly. But everyone's a fan of something, so whether it's, or of someone. So whether you're actually physically at the event, or if you're just following, your favorite artist on social media and they're talking about this thing that they're involved in, we hope that will kind of amplify the mass resonance of these kinds of projects and then spread and become a more commonplace practice.
Chris Rowe?
And just been on that for a quick second. I mean, that was actually part of the core imagination for why we thought it'd be cool to name this thing Climate Pledge Arena. Think about that. I get super excited every time I hear an ESPN announcer talking about climate. Like, when does that, and what demographics watching the hockey game and thinking about climate, interacting with it in a new way. And if you go to the arena, there is no compromise in your experience. It is a markedly better experience. It's beautiful. It's so well done. I think that's sort of a misnomer in sustainability. It's all about compromise. In this case, no, it's a better experience. And I think when people can come in and actually have that be associated with climate and actually bringing people together at the city center, especially coming out of the pandemic, I think that's the confluence of the change that we're trying to make.
Interestingly, and this goes back to your question as well, so we've taken the lessons learned at Climate Pledge, and we've just opened a new arena in Manchester in the UK. It's the biggest arena in Europe, 23,000 seats, also all electric, also will be carbon zero certified. And Climate Pledge has been part of that as we created a walking path from downtown Manchester to the arena along the beautiful canal there. So it's a really cool way to sort of extend the partnership, but extend the vision of what we're trying to do.
For sure.
Ending on what we are all here to talk about, partnerships. Can you each give some advice to those in the audience, whatever industry they're in, trying to form partnerships? What's like the one nugget you would give them? I'll start with you, Chris Rowe, and we'll come down.
One nugget? Oh, man.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, I'm just trying to think about our relationship, and that's really what it's become. It's not just a transactional thing where you do this, I do that. We're now several years into this, and I could not imagine a better group of people to work with and alongside and learn from. So it's not about where you start, it's kind of where you go and where you finish. And so I think that would be the one nugget, is to really find these partnerships that are going to endure, because change takes time, and it's worth it.
Chris Granger.
Yes, I would say also just and continue to be open. Like it was hard for you to tell us, no, you can do better at certain things. And you really pushed us to get to a place that is truly best in class from a sustainability standpoint. And I give credit to Rob and to B and those on the team who had to figure out how to do certain things along the way. So being open to that, and also being open to new partners. Like, we've had one sort of prep call for this panel, and within 10 minutes, Zoe and I have an idea of how we can focus on restoration topics within our live festival venues as well. So I just think being open to opportunities is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zoe?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I would also just say find the person in the room with the perspective most different from yours and have that conversation. Because I think this room's not a good example of that, because we all have pretty similar perspective. That's what we're doing here. But I mean, I think one of the sort of superpowers with Sound Future has been creating spaces where people from these disparate communities are coming together. I mean, maybe that's their first time. And then also with events, maybe if you're introducing something with a climate perspective, maybe you're that first touch point for that fan, for that audience, member. Maybe that's their first point of exposure to that new idea, and they're seeing it at a festival or at a sports event, or they're seeing it in a setting where their brain is spongy, they're more receptive to new ideas. There's been a lot of emerging research that people at live events are 7% more likely to engage in climate action than the general population. And there's a lot of really cool studies emerging kind of in that area where people are I think people want to participate in some way if they can drive good, but they don't know where to start, or they don't know how it relates to them. And so finding that common ground is just so critically important, and just talking to people that are not in your little echo chamber, not talking to people that are outside of your sort of silo, because live events and climate don't seem directly related, but when you kind of think about all of the ways that they can collaborate and bolster one another, there's just the endless opportunities. So I think it's just a matter of doing that from whatever your sphere of influence is. Think about who you're in contact with and what other industries you can touch, and just find those opportunities to talk shop and think about how you can expand into other areas.
Zoe, Chris, and Chris, thank you so much for your time. That is the end of our program, but please... That is the end of our program, but please feel free to stick around and continue networking. We start back up at 2 o'clock on the main stage, and I did want to thank just one last time our title sponsor, Amazon, for sponsoring this breakout and making it possible. Thank you all so much.